I mean, we've had another fun week. The playoff pictures are starting to kind of coalesce a little bit more.
Yeah, there's still 25, 26 games left, and one of the things that strikes me is, that I think the Brewers have a 4-game lead on the Cubs, and we could talk about some of the other teams in there. So I thought, well, so how do you make up 4 games in 25, right? So if you got 25, if you go 12-13 or 13-12, the other team then has to go something like 17-8 in order to catch you.
So if you're the Brewers, you're pretty much thinking as long as we can play slightly above 500 baseball the rest of the way out, it's going to be really hard for the Cubs to catch them.
Don't go 2007 or 2008 Mets.
Right. You can't win like 8 games out of the last 25. Then you give them a real chance.
So and I like the Brewers. I think they're going to be a dangerous team in the playoffs. And I think that the teams that are more look, we know that a couple of divisions are already done. The Dodgers and the Braves are like ridiculous, out there. But the other divisions, the Astros still have a chance. The Rangers still have a chance to catch the Mariners, who are now in first place, which is
you've had a very unfun week for the Rangers. That they had the best team ERA in the month of August, and they did not have a winning record because their bullpen just keeps blowing it.
Well, and sort of like the Florida bullpen, who took on David Robertson, who has been pretty atrocious for them.
He's been relieved of his closer duties.
Yeah, I feel bad for them. I like that guy. But the Twins are another team that has a modest lead, 5 games or so over the Guardians. I still don't believe in the Guardians, even though, and we'll talk about this, even though what they did at the waiver wire that they didn't do at the trading deadline.
Well, it certainly one's a lot less cost to your team.
100%. But I guess if you're a Cleveland fan, you're thinking, well, at least they did something.
Right. You know what? They're not giving up on the season. There's no reason for them to.
And I don't see why. Actually, I do. I guess only because the Twins are bad too in a lot of ways. Right. So I guess they're the Guardians. Why not us?
And you're a young team in the Guardians, so not selling at the trade deadline makes sense because you're totally willing to just run it back with this group next year and hope some guys develop. But the Twins never really ran away with the division. You've got guys that are just sitting there that you can pick up that won't cost you much. So why wouldn't you do it?
Yeah, and I think that the Guardians kind of doing that for their fans, but I don't think anybody thinks the Twins or the Guardians have a real chance in the playoffs in the American League.
No. I think the best they can probably hope for is to be a team that somehow ruins some good team season in the first round.
Right, but just like the teams that sold, like the Mets and whatnot, that was because of what I expect is a realistic viewpoint of if we get in, which we think all you got to do, like the Phillies last year, is get in. We're not winning. We're not good enough.
You're going to say you're obviously competing to win a World Series in your try, but I don't think the Guardian organization is thinking this is our year. We just need to get hot right now.
But they added some players off the waiver line.
Let's just go into that because I think that's the biggest story from this week. Is this was the waiver wire week, so teams were able to release players, send them to waivers, and if teams were interested in a reverse descending order from worst team to best team,
which is important,
they got their first pick at it. Now, generally, the interesting thing about this is they go through the bad teams pretty quickly because bad teams don't really have incentives to pick any of these guys up because what are they going to really do for you? You're just picking up somebody you're going to have to pay money to, and you're already not very good. The only time you would do that is if, like, somebody that shouldn't probably be waived is waived, and then, like, they're going to get snapped up instantly.
The waivers are called irrevocable waivers. So basically, you lose the player, and you don't have to give anything, see him ever again. And the Guardians, they went for pitchers, which I thought for a team that struggles so much with hitting.
Well, I think there was just not a lot of the hitting that was available in this group.
Yeah, I guess, or the hitting that was available didn't fit their position needs, on the field themselves. But yeah, they picked up Lucas Giolito, which you could argue is as much for next year, maybe. Although Giolito's up for a contract, so he's a free agent.
Ronaldo Lopez, who seems to be a package deal with him.
Matt Moore had an excellent year this year. I don't know if you realize how good the guy was.
Right, so that makes sense from a bullpen perspective. Especially because Clase has not been. He's been banged up. He's been inconsistent. So it makes sense going and getting another soft solid reliever for that pen.
And that's an interesting point about Clase because, the Guardians are still in it, so they're going to keep pitching him. But he looks like a guy that could use some rest.
Right. So getting a guy like Matt Moore to eat some of those innings is probably a good thing.
So you mentioned the top storylines. In addition to that, by the way, the only other guy that of any note that went was Harrison Bader going to the Reds.
Well, you got Hunter Renfroe
got
picked up went to the Reds. I think Dominic Leone went to the Mariners. The most noted thing about that is he was on the Angels at Citi Field. Then he gets released by the Angels and then picked up by the Mariners and goes back to Citi Field.
And 2 weeks before that, he was pitching for the Mets at Citi Field.
Right. So it's kind of just like he just
three different teams pitching in the same stadium.
The Mets released Carrasco. Nobody wanted him. Shocking.
Right. So he's still in the bullpen. Like he can stay on the team even though they put him on waivers.
Right. Because it just clears. They're just basically saying anybody want him because we don't. So I think there has been a bit of chatter about what the Angels did here. They released so many guys. What does that mean?
Because what they did, and I don't think they even exactly did it as much as they needed to. So they basically cut a bunch of good players, waived them with the idea of getting under the salary cap so that they wouldn't have to pay as much luxury tax.
And because they get a better compensatory pick when Ohtani goes and signs somewhere else. They get a second-round pick instead of a fourth-round pick.
So some of the talk around baseball is what the Angels did revolutionary in terms of our team's really going to put quality players or some quality players on waivers. I mean, look, the Angels let Giolito, Grichuk, Matt Moore, Leone, Reynaldo Lopez, nice pitcher, and Hunter Renfroe all on waivers. That's a lot of salary that came off the books.
I think that
they're still responsible for that salary, by the way.
They're still responsible for that salary. I think teams will do it. I think you can't, be like, oh, this is bad for baseball or, oh, this is, anti-competition.
Right. So I guess this commissioner is not going to come in and say this is not in the best interest of baseball.
I don't think any commissioner is going to do it because you're not going to punish a team for going for it at the deadline. And that's what punishing the Angels here would be in effect doing. The Angels traded for all these guys. They tried to make a playoff push. And unfortunately for them, it didn't work. So they've now cut their losses. They've shed their salary so that they're not hurt. Keeping these guys on their team doesn't do anything for the rest of this season.
Now, I'm not familiar. I know a lot of their Angels with exactly what the starting lineup is of the Angels with some of these guys they have let go. But is this a situation where this is not as major league a team and that fans that are coming and paying the same amount? It's not like the Angels are discounting tickets.
Well, the thing is, you can't talk about the lineup because I don't think anybody's paying money to come see Hunter Renfroe and, Randall Grichuk.
Understand.
They're there to see other, but I think that you could look at the pitching. It really depends, and this is where I can admit I don't have the knowledge. Who the Angels are trotting out right now? If they're trotting out guys that they're either interested in seeing from their own organization, or guys that are still quality major league players that just were kept down because you had these other better pitchers,
right? Who's getting the playing time that these guys aren't?
Right. I think that's the important thing because what I wouldn't be okay with is if they're trotting out a bunch of guys that they have no intention of taking a look at and can't compete.
I mean, just the last thing on the Angels. So think about it. So Trout comes back in and leaves in the same game, back to the IL. Okay, Ohtani has the elbow problem, but he's going to hit through the rest of the season, we think, pretty much, to make sure that he guarantees himself,
right.
I guess, the MVP until he knows he's got it locked up. But if you're an Angel fan, it's like, let's go to the ballpark tonight and watch the team play. I don't know why you'd go.
Their young rookie first baseman, Noah Chanel.
Yeah.
Hitting really well. I don't know. I'm trying to come up with something.
Yeah. Anyway, I just thought that it is. You're saying it isn't revolutionary, and we're going to see this again from other teams.
I think you're going to see this again. Teams will continue to do this, and I don't think it's only going to be an issue when a team starts releasing, when an owner is releasing guys because he just doesn't want to pay them. Like, oh, I don't have the money, so I'm going to release these.
Or I'm not going to spend the money.
I'm not going to spend the money. So, it would be like if all of a sudden Cohen's like, you know what, Lindor is too expensive. I'm going to put Lindor on waivers. I would have a problem with that because why?
Let's slide back to the division itself, right? So the Mariners had a nice stretch to come all the way to take, I think they have a game lead or so on Houston right now, and with Texas right there, about tied.
Yeah, Houston's had their handful with the Yankees this past, week, which has not, I think the Yankees had a couple young guys come up and get hits off of Verlander. And the Astros
Well,
have
Verlander gave up the home run to
Jason,
Dominguez.
yeah.
That's the kid's first major league at bat. Verlander tries a slow curveball, and the kid's batting third, and then he throws a fastball on the outside corner. And the kid hits it out to the left field.
Yeah, crushed it
For his first leadoff career home run for the Yankees since Aaron Judge.
First at bat home run, not leadoff.
Right, that's what I meant.
But yeah, I think that it's interesting because the Mariners have continued to play well, and the Astros have kind of, they've been, around 500, they win some, they lose some, but then the Rangers have just been in a free fall.
Yeah. They are the ones that sort of fell back to allow, and so I think the Rangers are in trouble because that wild card in the American League is going to come from them, the Tampa Bay Rays,
the Rays kind of,
and the Astros. So those
Rays, I feel like, kind of have their wild card. Who's ever not winning the East is gonna
the second place if the Rays somehow catch.
Well, they're only a game back. They're right there now.
Yeah,
they're because the Orioles, as good as August was for them, they have not loved the clock since it's turned to September these last few days. Like the end of August now into September has been a rough few days for Orioles, and that lead is shrunk now to like a game. And
now they've got their closers hurt.
Right. And that's going to really hurt because he's been so electric for
Bautista.
them. Bautista.
Felix Bautista.
So I think, so whatever AL East team does not win the division will be the first wild card, unless the bottom just falls out for one of them.
And I'm really aggravated with the Blue Jays because
they just won't take it.
Just won't take it, man. That other wild card is there for them, and if they end up falling back, then it's almost pretty much set, right? That's Rangers, Astros, Orioles, or Jays. And then the other team's going to win the division. We're the Mariners and the Twins. That's it. There's your AL playoff. I hope it doesn't play out that pat, if you will. I want the Blue Jays to rally and make something of it.
Is shrinking quicker and quicker every day because every time they're not making up these grounds, especially on teams like the Astros and the Rangers who have not been performing well, they are making it harder for themselves because now instead of needing to go, get 20 wins in their last, 30-something games, they need to get 20 wins in their last 22 games or something. Like just the window shrinks so much, so quickly.
So we didn't talk about the players of the week from the prior week, right? So we don't have this week's players of the week because the week officially ends today, I guess.
Right, they don't announce it. But last
Sunday.
week's players, so for last week, it was Adam Duvall and Mookie Betts.
Mookie Betts
had an unbelievable, and he's had another great week this week.
Mookie Betts, and how I feel about this guy. I think he's probably Hall of Fame already in my mind.
If not, he's like on the just keep playing your career and you'll make it. Track.
Ronald Acuna was so far and away the MVP in the league, and of course, did you hear what he did last night on Saturday night? He hit the hardest ball since 2018.
Wow.
Yep. 121.2 miles an hour off the bat, a home run. The other three are Stanton in 2018, Stanton in 2020, and Aaron Judge in 2017. In the last 6 years, those are the four hardest hit balls, and Acuna was right there with them. So the guy is having an amazing season. He got to the 30-60 thing. 30-70 is a possibility. 40-80 or 40-70 is a lot. That's a lot.
He would have to have a game where he hits like 3 home runs for me to start thinking that's possible, just because he would need to shrink the amount he needs to hit by so much.
But Mookie Betts, by B-WAR, is having a better season than Ronald Acuna. And that's as much because Betts is amazing, and he also is an amazing fielder to a degree over Acuna.
Yeah, and I thought one of the most interesting stats was, so despite Acuna having 60 stolen bases, he's worth 17 runs on the base paths, like 17.5 or something. Freddie Freeman, who has like 12 steals, is worth 17.2.
There's another MVP candidate, by the way.
So it's interesting. I just think that Acuna, for as good as he is a stolen base artist, is either the Braves hit so many home runs with him on base that it like negatively impacts.
Well, they score a lot of first inning runs, so I bet you he's got the league, major league
I'm just thinking
run scored.
Unless they're hitting so many home runs specifically with him on base to the point where he's not getting a chance to use his legs, there's something about his base running that like he's not finding ways to pick up those extra runs, because it's weird to me that Freddie Freeman is an equal in base running runs to Acuna.
And it's been a great series, and both of those two teams will go at it again today here on Sunday to finish their series for the year. And the Braves and the Dodgers are so far in front,
and I think
can't even see behind them.
You look at those two teams. The pitch clock for those games has been great. These games move, they're quick, and you look at the 20. I think it was either the 2021 or the 2019 playoffs, the average playoff game time was 3 hours and 39 minutes.
Please, let's not have that happen again.
Right. Do we really want to go back? Because they've just announced that the pitch clock will be remaining in the postseason. It's going to be here. And
they didn't take it out at the World Series level or anything like that.
If you want to watch a preview of what a playoff game will look like with the pitch clock, watch the Braves and the Braves and the Dodgers play. That's what playoff baseball will look like with a pitch clock.
And the games have been amazing.
And it's great.
Yeah. And I think so too. And
I think it'll help the fan energy in the playoffs. I think the fans will be even more into it because it'll keep moving. You won't have these big, long dead periods.
Well, why couldn't they have just extended it to, let's say, instead of 15 seconds with nobody on, 18 seconds? Just give them a little more time.
I don't see the point in that.
And obviously neither did they. So
and I think to the people that I think that this fear that, we might now have like a pitch clock violation at a big moment. The teams are they're rarer and rarer now. Teams really don't make mistakes like that.
Yeah, anymore. I think we had
recently we had our first full slate of games where every team played and there were no pitch clock violations. Right. And now there's usually only like 1 or 2 a day across the entire league. So I think you're going to see almost none of them in the playoffs because the players are going to be hyper aware of it too, and they're used to it now.
So obviously the Phillies, we said, are the other wild card team that are in pretty good shape at this point. I think they're the one, and then where everybody's fighting, the Reds and the Cubs and the Giants and the Diamondbacks are fighting for the other wild card spots.
Realistically, I feel like in the NL you're sort of fighting for your right to be slaughtered by the Braves or the Dodgers in the postseason right now.
Well, you put down the players of the week, and Max Fried is one of those players.
I will say the Phillies are the one team I think besides the Braves and the Dodgers that could give those teams trouble, just because with Aaron Nola starting to come back online as a starting
and pitcher, Wheeler, who had a great week,
and with Wheeler, they have the starting pitching to give a team a problem in a postseason series. They can hit. Their bullpen has been solid this year. It's not the Philly disaster bullpen like it was for a bunch of years. It's not as good as it was last year.
They were really good last year,
but they were otherworldly last year, especially in the playoffs. So, but I think the starting pitching is there where they're a team that could give either the Braves or the Dodgers problems.
And Trey Turner woke up.
Right, Trey Turner remembered how to play baseball.
So, I mean, what a difference, right? And this is what they expected from Trey Turner when they brought him in. We had an almost no-hitter last week.
Right, we had an almost no.
2 outs, 9th inning. I mean, that's
gotta be rough.
Man. 8 2/3 inning. That's tough.
But it doesn't count.
But Alex Cobb had a real good game. Logan Gilbert and Freddie Peralta are pitching great. Matt Scherzer has actually pitched very well for Texas.
Right, in Texas, the issue is that they're getting the authentic Aroldis Chapman experience in extra innings.
Yeah, he blew it against the Mets last week.
He blew another game yesterday or the day before. It's been rough for them.
So how about some of the hitters besides the guys we've talked about? Who is Davis Schneider of the Toronto Blue Jays?
He's their second base prospect. They called him up, and the dude has just come up and raked.
Are you kidding? He hit 476 for the week with 3 home runs and 9 RBIs. I mean, who is this guy?
He's just some rookie. He's the kind of guy that he called him. Wow, if he'd been called up earlier this year, he'd be a Rookie of the Year candidate.
And I don't know what his season stats are, but who's just turned out to be a really solid baseball player is Randy Arozarena. When he had that playoff and the World Series where he was dominant and all that, you thought, wow, this guy's going to be the next,
See, okay, I never thought that.
Oh, I thought he was that guy.
I thought he was overhyped.
And I don't know that he was or he wasn't. He wasn't as good as we thought he could be so far.
But he's still a really good player.
Really good
I think for me, it was just like, I'm like, okay, wait a second. I need to see him do this. Because we've all seen guys go on a 20-game stretch where, especially good players, where they're the hottest player on the planet Earth. And if you isolated that one 20-game stretch, you would be talking about them like they were having an unbelievable season. But then when you look outside of that, you're like, okay, wait a second. They're actually... look at a guy like Lindor, right? Lindor, since June, has been one of the best players in baseball, but because his beginning of the season was so poor, we talk about him like he's having a terrible season.
I don't know. We talk about him. I think Met fans know because he's hitting 250, and I think the first thing that still traditional baseball player fans look at, I should say, is they look at the batting average and go, well, it's not okay. He's got 25 homers and 25 steals, and he's got 17 defensive run saves, and he's one of the best fielders and Gold Glove candidate, but he's hitting 250, so he can't be that good. And his B-WAR is really hard, but it isn't as high as Ha-Sung Kim.
No, who's had an unbelievable year, and he's got a higher B-WAR this year at short. than any year of Xander Bogaerts' career.
Yeah, boy. Right now, that's a little bit painful there in San Diego
Right.
to have Xander Bogaerts play
I
like
think
they're
that's
playing.
the contract that hurts right now. Like this, like whatever you're doing with Soto and Tatis, whatever. But Bogaerts coming over and like forgetting how to play baseball was not something you counted
And didn't
on.
I pronounce the Padres dead in last week's, this week in baseball?
so.
Like people keep trying to say that like they're done.
Yeah, you were responding to Eduardo.
Eduardo
Perez,
was saying
'cause
they
he's
still have a chance.
still have a chance.
Sorry, Eduardo, they don't have a chance. So you started by talking about home run clubs. So
So we had Stanton is 1 home run shy of joining the 400 club. He's at 399 right now. However, Bryce Harper of the Phillies hit his 300th home run, and Aaron Judge became the fastest player ever to 250 until Pete Alonso beats him there.
in a year or two, a couple of years, yeah. And I think so if you look at Stanton and Harper, and that's an interesting guy to compare because Stanton's played a little longer, maybe, but I'm not even sure it was that much longer. Who's got the better chance at the Hall of Fame at this stage?
Harper.
But he'll talk about. Did you look at Stanton's career?
It's a lot better.
It's crazy. He's like near 140 for his career,
which is unbelievable. And then you look at those. He's got that stretch of seasons like 2015 in Miami to like 2019, and within.
Was he playing much then? Because that's the
thing. Is that he's lost
Stanton.
like 3 consecutive seasons of basically not playing, and that'll probably be both he and Harper's biggest
Not
issue.
that Harper is Mr. Healthy.
Right, no, that's going to be their biggest issues is that their overall stats are going to be held down by the amount of time they missed.
I'm pretty sure Bryce Harper's going to get there.
I
2
think he will,
MVPs, multiple teams to the World Series.
And he's the kind of guy people talk about.
And I see his game holding up.
Which matters a lot for getting into the Hall of Fame. You want to be a notable player. And there might be guys who have even better career stats than Harper, but Harper's perception among fans, writers, and other baseball players is so high. That'll help him a lot.
Agree with you a lot. So after this week, when we record this next week, we're going to be less than 20 games. So we'll really be looking at the home stretch.
Right.
We're into magic numbers now.
We're into magic numbers. You're going to see playoff races this coming week really kind of solidify. You're going to see if teams like the Rangers hold on, you're going to see what the Giants and the D-backs are made of this week, because this is a huge week for both of those teams. Same with the Cubs. I think the Marlins are kind of on their last gasp.
I agree.
They have to basically start rattling off a 10-game or so win streak here to even have a chance. But it's going to be an exciting run to the end.
Yeah, look forward to it very much.